You know, Wayne Dyer, one of his great quotes was, "Don't die with the music still in you." And I've said this before, you know, that's how we get fed as ministers, by listening to you all and the choices that you make. And so we are grateful. I didn't read today's daily word before I got here, and of course it's free, because that's what this book is all about. The book that we're going to be studying intensively, I hope you will be. Does anybody here want to be free from like black or Bucky Poo consciousness or anything like that? So this will help you. It's as if they took Myrtle and Charles's work and Emily Cady and Emma Curtis Hopkins and Wayne Dyer and whoever else there is out there and put it into really simple language. It was published in 2012. Michael Singer actually lives in Tallahassee and has I'm not sure, a place there. And so maybe we'll have a field trip, because I'd like to see him. I watched as much of him as I could on Oprah. So I wanted to talk first, just for a minute, about this scripture, because from the Daily Word, from Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, "For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery." What? Do you think that when you read that? I go like, what? What does that mean? So in Unity, what we do is we unpack it. What does it mean? So Christ has set us free. What is Christ in us? The C word that Rose always uses, consciousness, right? That's it. Because Christ is not Jesus' last name. Did you know that? When I found that out, I was about 30, I was like, really? What was his last name? And I don't even know to this day. I probably did at one point. So if we can come from love, come from knowing that all is good and well, and everything is in divine order, when we do that, when I can do that, which is not in every moment, then I'm free. I'm free from what the book calls the inner roommate, yes? Like, I didn't know I was renting out space. But I have 4 or 5 roommates, I believe. At least I did yesterday. Maybe today only one so far. And then the scripture goes on to say, "And stand firm, therefore." Stand firm. Do you know the truth of who you are? Do you know that you are wonderful and brilliant and magnificent and beautiful and great and every other adjective? Because you are. And I am as well. But we forget, don't we? Especially when the roommate starts talking. Do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. So we know we had slavery in this country, don't we? I believe we still do, in different forms. However, the one that we talk about scripturally is, who are you a slave to? Are you a slave to somebody outside of yourself, or is there something in you that you could be a slave to? For me, it's about making sure that things are always in order. Now, you wouldn't know that by my car or the room I live in, but in my mind's eye, everything's going to be in order. And why does it have to be in order? Because that makes me feel safe. Where does safe come from? Probably when Therese was about this tall, right? So we're always dealing with the truth of who we are from the moment we're born in this physical body. And I'm going to jump because, of course, my job is to afflict you, right? I comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So you can laugh. That's good. We like to laugh in church. On page 37 in this book, it says, "You're not even a human being. You just happen to be watching one." Because the truth is, we are a soul having a human experience. It's a big difference than, "You're what's wrong with me," right? Or "I'm going to blame somebody else," or "life is hard." Because if we're a soul, then this just happens to be the way that we are living. Therese is living in this body during this rendition of my soul's journey. That is not what I learned as a little Catholic girl. Anybody learn that as a little whatever you were when you were little? Wayne Dyer grew up in Unity. I knew Wayne Dyer when he had hair. Back in the 80s, he had a big circuit going in Chicago when I first got into Unity. So how do you feel when you hear you're not even a human being? Is it a little unsettling? Like, wait a minute, I'm here, I can feel myself. I see these other people, right? But that's what happens when we get caught up into what we think we are, when we allow our mind to take over. And that's an M, small m mind, not a big M mind. A big M mind is that of God, that of all that is great, all that is good. Are you afflicted a little bit? So Reverend Rose will continue when she gets back in October with the E Squared book. Isn't it great? That also afflicts you, right? But it's fun. It's fun affliction. So the scripture that she spoke about was from Luke 17, verse 21. Nor will people say, here it is, or there it is, because the kingdom of God is in your midst. It's not outside of us. It's inside of us. And as you know, in July, we celebrated my 57th birthday, and for probably 55 years, I've been trying to understand what does that mean. It's always an inside job. When you grow up as the fifth child in a Catholic family, what I learned was to be selfless, not in a good way. And so everybody else was more important than I was. Everybody else's opinion was more important than my opinion. And so I've been unlearning that for all of these years, and certainly at an accelerated rate when I found Unity at the age of 30. So do you know that the kingdom is within us? I do until that roommate starts. And then when the other roommate starts, and then the other one, oh man, you can imagine what's going on in my mind, and I don't know how many roommates you have in your head. And one of the last things I bet you Reverend Rose said to you is that the force is with you, right? Star Wars, we love that. So we're starting today. After the service, we'll grab some food, and we're going to meet in the peace room. And I've handed out. Next week, you're going to get these actually before the service, so that you can read your chapters and figure out how to afflict me with your questions on, wait, what does that mean? It didn't make sense yet again, right? And then I might say I don't know, because I don't have the answers for you. And what I often tell people is, don't believe me. Please don't believe me. Figure it out and see how it works for you. That's what's great about Unity. It's about self with a capital S, not the S that sometimes gets mistaken for our body, right? Because we're not our body, although we get attached to it, and I'm attached to it. And I bet you, Susie, you're attached right now to that, right? With some news of Wesley. And that's what we do. We have to deal with the reality that's in front of us. And I've been learning in this last year, I just passed my 1 year on a sabbatical, that I get to stop fighting with reality. You can imagine what that's like every day if you were with me. So we're a spiritual being in a human body having a human experience. And some of us have human conditions, don't we? But the truth is, the bottom line truth, always, no matter what, is that we are spiritual first. Always. And not everybody believes that. I spent a couple days, I was going to say weeks because it felt like that, with my family. It was actually one night, so there I go. It was actually 6 hours. And I promised myself that I would not take the bait that gets thrown out. I'm the only non-Catholic in my family. And again, imagine, all of that. And so I got some, asked some very interesting questions. The main one was, is that stuff that you believe in, is that like a cult? And I said, well, I don't believe that it is, because we study how Jesus lived, not how he died. And my one brother-in-law said to me, well, what does that mean? And I said, at Easter time, we celebrate the way Jesus died and what that did, and the resurrection of our soul, and the tomb time, and all of that, and the symbology that goes through that whole story is fabulous. And the rest of the time, we're talking, we're living, we're aspiring to be like Jesus lived. He was quiet after that and had another beer. So then I had another margarita. So on page 10 in this book, Michael Singer says, there is nothing more important for our spiritual growth than for us to realize that we are not the voice that we hear in our head. That we are the one who hears it. That's not everyday language, is it? We certainly don't teach that in school, right? I didn't learn it in any of the multiple schoolings I've had. But it's true. And so now I'm able to be somewhere and say, oh, I'm being influenced by my thoughts as I judge this person who's in the 10-line checkout lane with 20 items, right? Or passing me on 95, or whatever it is that I'm doing. And why am I doing that? Because if I spend more time with Therese and I move from my head to my heart, I'm going to have to feel. And I do a lot of that on purpose. That's what this whole sabbatical is about. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to make that shift when the mind starts talking, that you stop it and just observe? So this morning I'm out at O Dark 100 because I want to see the sunrise. Well, I forgot to talk to the weather god. And the weather god wanted it to rain. So I got to walk 45 minutes in the rain because I had walked 45 minutes out. And the whole time, I'm talking to myself. I'm studying this. I've read this before, and I'm still talking to myself. And finally, I thought, just observe, Therese. Just observe. So I saw birds, and I saw the clouds change, even though it was raining and it was dark. But if I had not, I could have been chattering like, oh, it's so cold. I actually had a chill for the first time since I've lived here in almost 3 years. I was grateful for it, however, and then I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be so wet, I'm going to get in my car, and I'm having a conversation with myself that anybody else, if I had said it out loud, would have said, who are you talking to? Is that important? Why are you wasting your time, right? Just walk. Just walk. So there's a difference, isn't there, between the awareness that we are and the voices. And it's not something when you read this and you think, oh, yeah, I got it, thanks. Because it's going to keep challenging you until our days end here on earth, I believe. Because I read this in 12, and I'm still practicing. So even ministers don't get it right away. And sometimes we never get it. So, again, don't believe me. Figure out how it's going to work for you. So I am the one who hears. I am the one who sees. As a soul. It really makes me, who's an extreme extrovert, for those of you who know your Myers-Briggs, I am off the charts E, and I used to be double off the charts, and I brought myself back in a little bit. And so I like to talk. And probably because, again, as you do introspective work, you figure out, where did I get this propensity to speak? Well, probably because I was number 5 and no one wanted to listen at this point. They were like, please, could we all just have some silence, And so why? And so in this last year, when I've gotten more and more quiet, the brain, we would call the brain or the mind, keeps talking. And what do you think it says? What does your brain talk to you about when you're, just rattling amongst yourselves and no one else can hear? What are some of the things? Video game. When am I going to play? When is she going to stop talking so I can go play my video game? I embellish that a little bit, but that could be it, right? Yes. Planning. What am I going to, I wonder what's for potluck. They always have such great potluck here. When's she going to shut up? Can we get on with this? I wonder what the next song is going to be. Hello, let's be present. Do we sometimes think, oh, I wonder what the neighbors are going to think if I run out in my PJs to get the paper, right? Or if I show up and I'm, got my hair in rollers as I drop my little one off at school. Or I don't even know if people use rollers. You can tell that's how old I am. But what is it that we do to stop ourselves from being authentic? Have you ever gotten bad advice from that roommate in your head? not yet today. Thank God it's only, 10:40. My watch is 5 minutes fast. That's why I was a little ahead of the game here. And so what we know, there's 3 things I hope you walk away with. So if you're going to take notes, do this. We want you to be, this is what I think the premise of the book is. Of course, let me write it down yet again. And oh, here I am. I forgot my pages were double. Okay, here we go. Awareness, consciousness, and the voice in your head. So those are his 3 main things that we're going to cover over these next 4 weeks. Knowing that it's a constant journey. Life is not about a destination. Remembering that the kingdom is within us. So awareness, which means then that you probably have stopped doing, so you can be, yes? And then the consciousness. And what does that word mean? Pure awareness. No multitasking, Therese. Consciousness, he writes, is at the point of awareness reflecting back on itself. That's a big one. Consciousness has us at the point of awareness reflecting back on ourselves. I remember in ministerial school, Reverend Rose and I both had a teacher named Robert Brummett, Finding Yourself in Transition, and he would talk about the witness self, and he would always use his hand as if you're watching from a high watch, which is what we do as prayer chaplains, right? We take ourselves out of the equation. So can you do that? Are you willing? So we're not our voices. We're not our thoughts. What are we doing here? Who are you? He asks that in these chapters as well. And do you find sometimes that you actually have an argument between roommates? I think I'm going to have spaghetti for dinner. No, you can't have spaghetti. You're not eating carbohydrates, Therese. I know, but this is gluten-free spaghetti, and my roommate just made this great sauce. Well, I know, but then you're going to have to walk extra longer. Well, yeah, but you don't want to offend this person because they just made your stop, right? And so the whole premise is to just be aware of what's happening. And as we get busy, remember we're human beings, not human doings. Is there something that's trying to emerge within you? Because whether you know it or not, because you come here, you're having spiritual awakenings. Sometimes they come like 2x4s, don't they? And sometimes they're just little nudges. Like, oh, I finally get that. I finally get it. Now, is your roommate critical? Are you sure you're wearing that to church? Why didn't you put curlers in your hair today and straighten it versus wearing a curly? This whole dialogue as you're, figuring out what to wear. Why? Why are we critical? Maybe we heard that when we were little. And it just perpetuates as we go on. So stop the critic. If you wouldn't say it to your grandbaby, or this new little baby back here who has a head bow on, you wouldn't say it to whoever's picture you're looking at, then you don't get to say it to yourself. Oftentimes when I'm with my friends and their children or their grandchildren and they're doing something that's less than spiritual, because that's what children do sometimes, right? So they're crabby or, Mom, I thought we were going to do this, or whatever the critical part that comes out, especially in the teenage years. And I'll say to them, don't talk to my friend that way. And they're like, what? What'd you say, Aunt Therese? Everybody calls me Aunt Therese or Nana. And I said, don't talk to my friend that way. I'm talking to my mom. I said, and your mom is my friend. And I don't like when you talk to her that way. Oh. So if we can start early on that it's not okay sometimes to say the things that we say. So it says that when this narration keeps going, what Michael Singer says, it's because we want to narrate the world the way we want to see it. Anybody else have a control gift? It's a gift. Everything is of God. It's a gift, right? So when my narrator keeps going, it indicates to me that something is not incongruent. It is incongruent inside of me. And fear is somehow percolating. Anybody have fear anytime? Sometimes? It happens. It's natural. It's part of being human. We just don't want it to control us. And so when the narrator keeps talking, I now know at 57 to say, oh, what are you not realizing, Therese? What are you not looking at? Who do I need to apologize to? Do I need to make a phone call? And it's a different kind of rationalizing what I might be doing to stop the voices. Because again, being a soul, all that we have, all that we are is love. But sometimes I don't show up like that. And that's pretty scary for the other people. He says, what I end up experiencing is really a personal presentation of the world according to me, rather than a stark, unfiltered experience, he writes, of what is really true. And so I know the last time I spoke, I had just buried a friend. I had my homiletics teacher that taught me how to speak at Unity pass. And several other things have happened even since I saw you. So I'm tending to sit more in what does this mean other than the fact that we're getting older, right? What does it mean? What am I supposed to be learning? What's mine to do? How can I be on purpose? And am I willing to let go, like I have already for a year, for the next year, so that Spirit and God can have its way with me and I'm not in charge? Well, so far, I'm probably at about 80% not in charge in a year. Can I make it the other, 70%? I don't know. But I'm willing. And so my mantra every day is, I'm will to will the will of God, which takes me out of the driver's seat. But I'm used to driving my car. So you can imagine that battle every time I get in the car and someone else wants to drive. So I love when Reverend Rose is like, do you want to drive? I'm like, yes. Oh, are you sure? Oh, yes, please let me drive. Because it's comfortable for me. It's what I know. And so what I have found out, and I just revealed this to Reverend Rose the other day. I went on a retreat a couple weeks ago, and I had the narrator in the mind. I was given a full scholarship, $1,800, and it's a retreat ministering to ministers. Interfaith. I was the only Unity person there, the only woman there. I was back in my old days when I used to work in the steel industry. And the whole time I'm like, well, I really shouldn't go. And Reverend Rose would be like, Therese, they gave you a scholarship. I know, but it's this amount of miles, which means time, gas, and I really shouldn't, I shouldn't do this. And so as soon as I start hearing the should, then it's the narrator, right? Because we don't should on ourselves in Unity. And I almost had myself talked out of going because why? I'm not worthy. Where did that come from? Where did it come from? I don't know. But somewhere way back when, before I probably had freckles, somehow I learned that. And so somehow it has emerged in this last year as I keep excavating what no longer serves me. Or kind of like Michelangelo said, I got the block of marble knowing David was already in there. And all I did was let fall away all that wasn't David. Isn't that a beautiful way to think that that's what we're doing every time we spend time with ourselves? So that's pretty much a vulnerable thing, telling you that I have those thoughts. But if I don't tell you that, then I'm not being true. We all have them. They come, they go, they come, they go. I'm hoping they go, or they only come every so often, right? But I buffer myself from reality if I think, oh, let me just be about busyness and then I don't have to feel, right? Because it's a protection mechanism. And then it doesn't serve me. And it doesn't serve any of us to not sit in what our heart, our soul is telling us. That's why it's the longest distance in our life, the 18 inches from our head to our heart, to be real. And that's what the untethered soul is. Can you be untethered from what you think you should be, you should look like, you should drive, the jewelry you should wear, the house you should live in, should. Can you be untethered from it? Would it be okay? So it's taken life circumstances for me to push me into being untethered. But Spirit is always pulling me. And that's the part that I have to remember. This is my soul's journey. This is my soul's journey. It was a fabulous week being ministered to. And of course, because this is what I do, let me help with the dishes. No, sit down. I can do that. No, sit down. You know, they had to keep telling me to sit down. I'm 57. Sit down, you know. What is it, Therese? But I feel like, well, they're older than me. Let me just help them with the dishes. Oh, they're older than me. Let me help them with the boxes. Because I was so uncomfortable receiving their uninterrupted attention for 5 days. There were 5 ministers. We had 10 ministers ministering to us. So it was pretty fabulous. So then the other thing that came out with all of that, of course, since I didn't know anybody and I was the only woman, trust. Who are these people? They're not of unity. How do I know I can trust them? Methodist, Baptist, Episcopalian, and Lutheran. Where did that come from? Why does everybody have to be unity? Not everybody in my life is unity. So as we take away the cobwebs and we let go all the things we're tethered to, feelings arise. So then we looked at, how does trust not show up in your life in other places, Therese? Well, what do you mean? Why are you asking me that? Well, you didn't trust me to get your breakfast this morning. Well, no, you don't know what I like to eat. I mean, you know, so I can have this whole, I had the dialogue out of my head with a real life person. Why? Why? Because that's our job every day until we ascend to our next assignment and we get our angel wings. We are here to have this spiritual awakening, to be the one who sees and to be the witness. And I got to witness these 4 other ministers in raw pain. They just left their churches within weeks. You know, I left mine a year ago. Wow. So then I got to say, wow, look at me. Look at how far I've come. Not with your ego involved, but I get it. I get this is a soul's journey. Right now, they're just mad. They're mad at God. And it's okay. We actually had a yelling session. And we used words you wouldn't want to hear in church. Grown people. It was fabulous. So we're the subject. And everything outside of us is the object. Everybody breathe. On page 28, he talks about being, he doesn't say it, who you've come here to be, but you've heard Reverend Rose say that. There would no longer be an awareness of being, he says. And without an awareness of being or consciousness, there is nothing. So we have to shift so that we can be aware of what our soul wants us to know. Probably means we have to turn off the TV sometimes, yes, or take a walk, listen to some music or not. I knew there was real growth in me yesterday when I gave away a big shell, one of those big ones that was still connected. And I didn't even tell Reverend Rose when I got home. Somebody said, where did you find that? She had her little grandchild with her. It was about 7 o'clock yesterday morning. And I said, oh, they're down there in all the muck that's coming in, you know, over by the Cape at Jetty Park. And she's like, oh, I hope I can find one. And I thought, just give her yours, Therese. And the 5-year-old was ecstatic, of course. And he's going to separate it. That's the first thing he's going to do is separate it. We know that. But I said to her, this is connected. And so maybe it'll represent, you know, your relationship with your grandson. And then she gave it to him, knowing he was going to separate it. So can you do that? How often do you do that? Do you step aside and say, how can I benefit somebody else? Not at the expense of ourselves. I do believe witnessing, because I never had any children of my own, witnessing my daughter-in-law, or daughter-in-love, as she calls herself. I'm your daughter-in-love. I'm like, oh, okay. Getting up, working 12 hours a day, coming home, and she's never crabby. I'm crabby, and I just live with myself. she's never crabby, you know, and preparing the boys and, you know, the son, her husband, my son, doing things because she knows the truth of who she is and she's happy inside. He says, I am the one who sees. From back in here somewhere, I look out and I am aware of the events, thoughts, and emotions that pass before me. You live in the seat of consciousness, which means that you are not what is happening to you. I got a call, and I got to go yesterday down way south in Palm Bay. I'd never been, you know, it was almost out of Palm Bay. And this woman had called somebody who called somebody who called me and said, could you come and bless our land? We had a fire. Yes. And she was asking, why do you think this happened? I said, electrical shortage, lightning, because they don't know why. I said, time for the building to not be there. And so I spent about an hour and a half with her, and she said to me, wow, I think I know now what I want to do. I think I'm going to rebuild, and we're going to have this place be a place where children with needs can come and ride my horses. I said, then there's your answer. And if it changes, that's okay too. But we never know why things happen. So I say to her, can you help? Can I invite you to shift it to what? What does this mean? What does my soul want me to know? What are we supposed to do with the land now? And they also lost a P-U-P-P-Y in that. And so the young children very attached to that. And so we talked about souls getting angel wings. And I brought them all the shells that I had given you all that one day. And they opened the box, and the mom at 45 started to cry. She said, I've never seen these shells connected like this. I said, so you have a connection to each other, you have a connection to your land, but you're not your land. You have a connection with your horses, but you're not just, she's some renowned horse whisperer person. And I said, so that's where it happens. It's the awareness of the detachment of the truth. Because I'm a soul here to love. And anything less than love means I'm off track. So I invite you this week to give your inner roommate a name. And then next week we'll talk about it when we gather afterwards. And notice the awareness when you stop and you hear the chatter and you go, oh, I'm chattering. One of the great things that he says in here, you know, we hear about people who have lost souls. Like, oh, she was a lost soul, or he was a lost soul. What he says is when our thoughts, emotions, and sensory perceptions are all synchronized, and those are all things outside of ourselves, usually as well. When our awareness is sucked into something that's happening outside of us, which could easily have happened to this woman named Julie and what happened on her farm. And forgetting there's a higher purpose. And she said, I don't want to be known as the farmer who lost animals. And I said, then you're not going to be. So we get to keep our soul untethered to attachments by being aware, right? Staying conscious and knowing that the inner roommate is the one that's probably dictating your life. Up until now, as Mary Madden Morrissey would say. And so think about joining Leslie's class on the 17th. I think I've mentioned that Mary Madden Morrissey is an ordained unity minister. The trend seems to be going away from the word reverend. I'm not there yet because I'm a little attached to it until I'm not, right? But in here, what she writes, and this, most of us know this from Thoreau, one advances confidently in the direction of their dream and endeavors to live the life they are imagining because we pass the invisible boundaries. So when my little ones say to me, I can't, Nana, I can't. I said, oh, wait, what's the one word we don't use when Nana's here? Can't. I said, right, so what? You need help with that? Or, you know, and so we've got them relanguaging so that they know everything's possible, and most likely we're going to need help. That's why you have a unity community. That's why we're having potluck. It takes a village, and you already have one. Singer says, spiritual growth is about the point where you feel the shift in your energy. the aha moment, like, oh, that was really good, or, ooh, Therese, you showed up not nice there. I did that the other day with AAA as I was dealing with a dead battery. My Irish showed up, and then I called back and apologized. She said, I don't know who you were calling, but I'll take the apology. Thank you. I said, yeah, I know, I'm sure you yell that all the time. I'm out here on the side of the road, and it's raining, and it was all about me. Well, I was safe. But why does that happen? I shift into, I'm in a place I don't know, oh, maybe I'm not safe. And it's all unconscious. So then the awareness comes, and you get mindful, and you're able to make the apology. Also forgive yourself. I forgive myself every day for the things I knowingly and unknowingly did, because we do afflict people, don't we? Sometimes knowingly and sometimes we don't. So when the chitter-chatter comes, say, oh, thank you for bringing this awareness that I need to be conscious. And thank you, inner roommate. My inner roommate is called the woman from H-E double hockey sticks. And so do that this week. Name the roommate and see how often it shows up and what are you aware of. And are you willing to be untethered from the things that no longer serve you? Let us pray. Living, loving presence. We're willing until we're not. And then we're willing again. So have your way in and through us to be untethered to things that don't serve us. Habits, words, actions, thoughts. And let us be aware this week with mindfulness of this inner critic and this inner roommate that really wants to run life as we move from our head to our hearts and allow our hearts to open and to feel. Thank you for this loving community that supports each other. Thank you for the consciousness that makes it possible for Reverend Rose to have a month off after 8 years. Probably her third time off in 8 years. And so we are grateful for the board, for all the congregants who know that even ministers need a rest. And we hold Wesley and our new little baby with her head bow on in great awareness of all that is, of all that each of us have come here to be, love expressing as you in this world. We are grateful, God. Thank you. Amen.